Hi there, and welcome back to the Few Show. Today I'm joined by Tom Booth of Loke. Thanks for joining us in the show.
G'day, David. Thanks for having me,
You might
mate.
be the first guest we have from your part of the world. Have you lived there your entire life?
Yeah, I grew up in Adelaide, which is a little town at the bottom of the world. So, been in Australia for some time. Normally, able to travel a little bit out and get out, but yeah, obviously at the moment that's not possible.
So I noticed that you're a co-CEO of your company. Is that something you chose from your company's origination that you want to always maintain, like, I guess, equal power with your business partner?
Yeah, so when I guess, started the business, we didn't really have real defined roles in the company. More so, me and my business partner Matt kind of ran external and sales and marketing side, and I ran more the operations side of the business and the people. And it's sort of we've stuck to those as our core. And obviously, being a CEO of a business, you're always doing sales. You always have to be selling, whether it's yourself or the product to potential customers. But the split of having co-CEOs is has worked really well because we're both in different
Hmm.
markets. Like I'm in Australia running the product team and the Australian team, and Matt's over in the UK running our team over there, and being able to just have someone to rely on so far away, not only geographically but time zone wise, is super important to the growth of the business.
So I've read articles about how having co-C. So I also have a similar like co-founder, co-CEO situation with my business. But how do you handle? Like, do you ever have that like odd scenario where you're like just disagree on how something should be done, and then someone needs to make an executive decision?
Yeah, it's like any relationship. It has its ups and downs. It has its peaks and troughs, and um, we've been pretty good that if the other person can um, convince each other of a solution or uh, something to solve a problem, then we'll go with it. And both of us are pretty flexible where we try to put always put the business first in our decision making process. But yeah, it hasn't really presented an issue where like we've had any major conflicts. We've had minor ones, and pretty much every conversation. If you heard me and Matt speak, you'd probably think we're having conflict. It's just I'm a part Greek, he's part Lebanese, and we get very excited in our discussions. So it can seem a little strange to outsiders, but it works really well. So yeah,
Excitement's good.
both supportive of each
You
other.
have to be passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
So can you tell the audience a little bit more about your business and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so Loke, we have built a sales and marketing platform for the hospitality business.
Cool. And I think from your website, you are targeting more of. It looks like a lot of restaurants. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'll start over.
Okay, sounds good. Go for it.
You you did sort of freeze, but that's all right. Yeah, so at Loke, we've built a sales and marketing platform for hospitality businesses, and the sales tools are all about driving better customer experience for their customers. So things like just paying a bill in a more streamlined way, order to table, order for takeaway, for delivery and pickup, and then coupling that with marketing tools to help the merchant drive more revenue out of their customers. So increasing how often a customer comes to visit them, increasing how much that customer spends when they come for a visit, and then driving new patronage to that business. So there's a lot of features and tools built into the product, and I won't bore you with every single feature, but as a top line, we're about using that hospitality's own brand to drive a better customer experience and more money for that hospitality business.
So when I think of hospitality businesses, I think primarily of restaurants. Are there restaurants, bars, and the like? Are there other businesses that you support that aren't in that scope?
Yeah, so in our markets, we're mainly in Australia and the UK. Um, there's a thing called pubs, which are really popular. So, like what you would call a bar in the US. We work with a lot of
Mm.
pubs, really strong in that space. Cafes, restaurants, fast food, hole in the wall outlets, like anywhere that's serving food that needs to be um, served in a fast way. Uh, is suitable sort of customer to us. We have dabbled a little bit in the retail space, never really gone after it in an
Mm.
extensive way, but it doesn't really, our product isn't suited for that space as it stands currently. So it's really your food and beverage, your hospitality industry.
So it's really interesting because I was talking to my dad just about a year ago when COVID just started about like why isn't this more the solution that you provide, like why isn't this more commonly available? And I do get you're tackling different markets and you haven't hit the US in full stride yet, but man, we definitely need that technology. It's crazy how inefficient and there's I hate all the scenarios where I was like, dang, I just need someone's attention and I just want to tell something very quick so they can I guess give me what me or my friends want just so we can I guess smooth out those transactions. And is that the goal of what you're trying to achieve with Loke?
Yeah, like we're actually like Matt comes from a hospitality
Mm.
background, and how we started the business was around solving a lot of the problems for the merchants. But then I come from a user of hospitality, and a lot of the problems that both of us have spent a lot of times in restaurants and bars and pubs along the journey. So yeah, a lot of the issues we have, we're like, well, we could do that. We could fix that with technology. Like something like as simple as having to pay a bill. Like it's a terrible process when you've got to get the waiter's attention
Right.
and get them to come over and pay it. And then like I might pay a big amount on that bill, and say I pay $500 and then never see them again, and they never look after me, and they never know that I'm a good
Mm.
customer. So solving a lot of those problems for the merchant and for the end users been really important to us. But one of the big ones that we brought out in the last few years is the order to table, and that was derived mainly from me and Matt sitting in venues drinking beers and just going, well, why do we have to go up to the bar? Like the two of us are deep in conversation about how we're going to drive the business forward and talking about it and coming up with crazy ideas. And then the conversation it stops, and one of you has to go to the bar and spend 10 minutes waiting. We're just like, this is so dumb. Like, we have all the technology. Let's just make it better. Like, so, and that's been massive for our business. Like, it's driven so much usage of the
Mm.
product, and we get amazing feedback from customers.
How long and who was the how long have you had this idea as a team? And who was the one who I guess first came to the other person and be like, I have an idea and I want to get started. Are you with me?
Yeah, it's funny because like we never really like sat down and said, "Oh, what idea are we going to do?" It was more fluid
Mm.
than that. It wasn't like we were just like, "Oh, we're going to do this thing, and this is where we've got to." It was like, "Oh, how can we help hospitality
Mm.
businesses?" And then we pitched off a, a PowerPoint back in the day in 2012, and we solved our first product was something that solved part of the problem. Um, and we never built a technology product before. We never really had a great idea. My background, my business before was a telecommunications business, and Matt had run nightclubs and bars and a
Mm.
pizza joint. So got trying to work out how to build technology was quite difficult and took us some time. And then trying to get the product to where it is today obviously took some time. That was in 2012 we started that process. It wasn't until I reckon sort of mid 2017 we had a product that we were like, okay, we're kind of there now. Let's start investing in growth. And that's when
Mm.
we sort of started to look at different markets and expanding. But that took us like 5 years. It wasn't just like, all right, we're going to do this, and within a month we had it all sorted. It took us a long time to get to that
So
point.
what was that first problem you wanted to solve, like the MVP, if you would, of your current business?
The first issue was like knowing who your
Okay.
customer is. So, Matt ran a nightclub in Adelaide, and they were doing 200 grand a month in revenue. He didn't know one customer, have any detail, and they're doing 200 grand a month
Hmm.
revenue. Like, imagine in your business just not knowing who the invoices are going out to. You're just randomly sending them out. So that was the first problem we looked to solve, and we did solve that with a product called Boogie Spot, um, and effectively, oh, sorry, one sec, my coffee arrivals here. Um, Effectively, that product was you would take a photo or check in or invite your friends to come to the pub, and it was like an app. It was first of its kind, like right when apps
Hmm.
were sort of coming out. And yeah, we just built that. It didn't really work. Like, it worked really well for the first 6 months, but then the merchants were saying, well, how much money are these customers spending with us? And it was pretty early on that we saw that, well, this product's not really sustainable, but we had to keep
Hmm.
peddling it because we'd spent all our money on it. So we just kept selling it and selling it and selling it.
And is
But in
this
the
your own money,
background,
or is this an investor's money?
it was initially our
Okay.
money. We didn't take on investment for some time. So yeah, we bootstrapped the business for some time. And yeah, it wasn't until we kind of needed to make that link between the customer and how much money they were spending. Like, we could tell them, oh, this customer's bought 4 friends and they've redeemed 3 beers, and you know this sort of stuff, that they were just like, well, how much money are we making? And like, then it was from all of this feedback, and we did a lot of surveying with our customers, and it was just like all anyone cared about was how much money they were making. And we couldn't tell them that.
I
And we
see.
were like, we need to tell them that. We need to understand that. And so that was when we brought in payments and um, tried to connect the customer with that
Hmm.
payment.
So right now, when you track these payments, are you tracking it like on a account basis, or is it on a payment method basis?
So everything's that we're tracking for the customer. So we looked at a whole range of different solutions. And at the time, there was like, a physical card, and you could scan that, and then that could track how much you were spending. But we were like, that's more of a like that's a harder process for the consumer. They have to get the card out, they have to scan it, then they have to get their wallet out, then they have to get their credit card and pay with that. So we were like, how do we streamline that
Hmm.
process? So the way we have done that is through tracking the actual payment. So the customer just stores their credit card in the merchant's
Hmm.
app or pays through their website, and that then tracks that payment through their just normal payment
Hmm.
process. So it's a simpler process for the consumer, which is just super important. Like, if you're making it harder, uh, then it doesn't really make your product used like it should be.
Hmm. How did you find your first users when you were like testing it and iterating in the early days?
Well, for us, our users haven't been so important. It's about finding the merchants to partner up with and to work with. And to do that, like, we just did every standard
Hmm.
sales trick, cold calling, walking into venues, um, sending out materials, sending emails, LinkedIn, just going super hard. And we got a lot of merchants on board. And then those merchants, we worked with them to get their consumers to
Hmm.
download the app. So putting up materials in their stores. Um, they all had like really strong, back in 2012 and around that stage, all the venues were having this really strong affinity to Facebook, because it was just sort of rolling out. And we latched onto that, and they'd be posting on their Facebook pages what offers they were offering through their app and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it like, because there's so many customers typically going to a hospitality
Hmm.
venue, like you only need to get some of them users on board. Um, and so yeah, it's the benefit, like I guess it's like a massive benefit of having a B2B product, but it's also can be a massive negative. Like if that business, that merchant doesn't promote it, no one uses it, or doesn't tell anyone. It's not just like a consumer product like Uber Eats, right? They've already got a huge
Right.
database of customers. And so if you put a new merchant on, that merchant doesn't really have to do anything, and they'll start to see some orders through. It's a bit different in our
Hmm.
product.
And what was what's your target goal in terms of if you onboard a merchant, what's the percentage of its user base where you're like hoping to achieve if you can like ballpark? Okay.
100%.
Do you track or like do you have a
But
um,
yeah, that's our
right.
end goal as a business. We're just constantly, how do we get to
Hmm.
100%? How do we get to 100%? Like that's what we want to achieve. And we do have customers doing 100%, so we know it's possible. Uh, but typically, like a business doing at least 10% is enough for us to know that we'll increase how
Yeah.
much money that business is making.
And when you're doing this platform, how do you know how to price it, and or how do you price it?
Well, it's interesting. Like pricing's always been one of those big discussion points in the business. Uh, Typically, we've we started the business as a monthly subscription service, and we we broke it down as a per location pricing. So, say you were McDonald's, you've got 20,000 locations. We might charge $100 per location or something
Hmm.
like that. Uh, but when COVID hit, we were forced our hand a little bit to change our model, um, which has been good for us in the longer term. So we were trialing with a group of, it's just a 30 site cafe group at the time. We were trialing just no subscription fee, just a percentage fee. Um, and we were seeing, okay, do they launch quick enough? When are we going to make a return? Just all the metrics. And as a startup, you're
Hmm.
constantly trying new strategies and testing them out and seeing what works. Fortunately, we were, because once COVID hit, we had a look at the stats on that. We were like, well, they're not doing amazingly, but they were making us sort of $50 a site, which is way less than what we want to be making, like in revenue base, because there's a lot of costs involved running a
Right.
business like ours. Uh, and so we quickly had to change our model and offer uh, a, just what we call a commission only fee. Um, and the major benefit for us as a business is then we're truly aligned with making that business
Hmm.
work and make that business profitable. And like, as much as the CEO of the business, I've always said we're aligned to making these products work. If you've got someone paying you 200, $300 a month, and they're just not picking up the phone, and they're being hard to get a hold of, and they're not using the product, they're still paying you $200, $300 a
Right.
month, right? If they're not paying you anything and you can't get a hold of them, you either have to pull the plug on helping that customer and move on to someone that actually
Hmm.
wants your help, or you've got to get super creative with how you get a hold of them and how you actually drive revenue for
Hmm.
that business. And it's been like an absolute change to the business. Like in the last 12 months, we've tripled or the size of our revenue base. Um, Most of our customers are now percentage only. So there are like the sort of legacy
Hmm.
customers that still are on the old pricing, but all of our new customers are on percentage based fees. So, and it's been massive. We've developed a whole new department, what we call success managers, and we're proactive about helping our customers be more successful. And it's just yeah, we've seen such good feedback from the community and from hospitality businesses around how much help and support and how much money they're making at the end of the day, and that's what we're all about.
Oh, when you think of percent attribution pricing models, what's the percentage that you're generally like? What's the typical window that a client in call it 2021 might be paying?
So we have like different features and they
I see.
cost
Okay.
different amounts. So like takeaway delivery, they're different pricing to pay a bill or um, order at table and these sort of things. But uh, our average sort of fee is around three and a half
Okay.
percent.
And does that include? Does that mean you're paying the credit card transaction fee? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So in that 3.5%, we cover
I
all the
see.
costs associated. So credit card fees, if a customer does a chargeback, all the support associated with the payments, which is something that um, you know, we're so big about providing the best customer experience for not only the merchant but for the end consumer. And we found really early on, if the merchant was in charge of the support for their own consumers, they just were no good at it. That's not
It's not the strong suit.
their sweet
Right. Right.
spot, right? They're good at delivering beers to a table, making up new recipes, like all these things to do with hospitality. But if someone's writing on an app, I just got charged the wrong amount, like they will take days to get back to that person. In technology, you need to get back within, hours, not days. So we've built a really strong support team and we provide that first level support. And yeah, if that customer gets to the point where they want to ask about a specific item that they ate or something like that, we might feed that
Mm.
back to the manager of that store, but we're in charge of that um, support aspect for our merchants. And it is a massive point of
Mm.
difference um, to, I guess, other solutions out there that they could implement. Because yeah, like it's so important, the support aspect.
So I imagine onboarding is a fairly heavy process if a hospitality business is currently doing everything the old school way. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's not a quick process. It can be like from a technology point. Uh, it used to take us pre-COVID. It was about 6 weeks to get someone from signed up to being able to transact. We've pulled that back to about 30
Mm.
minutes now, which is really good, and it means that with the right customer, yes, they can be transacting that same day if they need to.
So,
But to operate all the functionality, all the features, it can take some time. So we stage out onboarding approach and get them like, someone might say, I really need delivery. And we're like, cool, let's just
mm.
launch that and then let's build on it. Because we've got about 10 modules that they could use. So if you go, all right, here's all 10, it it will just take forever. So we stage it, and that tends to work really well. The other big thing is like getting materials, so physical materials that can be shown in their locations to get customers to use it. Um, but yeah, like that's been pretty successful for us. Yeah, the bigger like thing that we're always thinking about as well is like how to get the staff engaged. So at the restaurant there might be 20, 30 staff
Mhm.
per restaurant, and if they're not engaged in their solution that they're rolling out, like say you're a customer there and you're trying to order to your table and you ask a question to the staff and they don't, oh, I've never seen that app or I've never seen
Mhm.
that product, then the user experience will be terrible. So the ways we've sort of worked with that is staff incentives. So we have the ability for staff to get you to use the product and then get incentivized for that, which is pretty unique. We get them to run their staff discount scheme through the product. Um, that way, they're super engaged and they're getting a discount every time they use it, so they're happy, right? Like who isn't happy with a discount? So like they're probably the two biggest things to get the staff involved.
And I imagine for a lot of businesses, this might be the first time they're digitizing their menu. Is that a good guess?
Um, they'll have a digital menu, but it might be a
Okay.
PDF, you know. So, but yeah, like it's the you really need to hold their hands in how to set up a menu, because in digital as well, like the way it's set up can change how much money you're making so easily. Like even just something, you've got a burger, and then you might have an add-on of a beer that has your high margin, your white label beer basically that you're selling, and it has your highest margin. So that should be your add-on, not a Heineken that you're paying an expensive amount for. And just talking through that, because we've got experience rolling out thousands of locations. My team, like, they understand how to set menus up so that you're making more money and what products to put in there. Like if you've got a product that is like a marquee product within your hospitality business, but it's an expensive product to make, maybe don't put it as the first thing on your digital menu. Put it down the bottom. Yeah, you can find it and get it, because people typically just click the first thing and order that. And just little things that can make a big difference in margin for the hospitality businesses, because their margins are very, very thin, especially in Australia, where the cost of staff is really high comparative to the rest of the world.
So when someone's onboarding for the first time, are they usually doing it on a self-serve basis, or is there someone from your team like holding their hand throughout the process?
We hold hand through the process. They can do it themselves. They get sent like emails and information on what to do, but we typically 99% of our customers, we hold their hand from sign up to getting them live. We have tried like to build it completely self-service, and we have a product that is completely self-service, but we haven't been able to crack that yet. I think hospitality businesses are a little bit behind on that. Like it might take another couple of years before we're able to really streamline that. As the millennials start to own more and more hospitality, like that's when people will be more likely to do self-serve stuff.
Is the onboarding process a major bottleneck if everything requires a lot of like interaction between someone from your team and someone from some restaurant or hospitality business?
Yeah, it is probably one of the biggest problems in our business is the onboarding. And it's something we're just constantly striving to be better at, constantly evolving. But it is something that's a hard problem to solve.
What's your best solution been so far to tackle that problem?
People. Just putting people, like
more people.
Yeah, we've tried a lot of things. Well, just having a dedicated person. So having someone that business is like super comfortable to just pick up the phone and chat through things, and supporting that merchant to getting live. So we always talk about getting customers live in the first 30 days as like a metric that we're targeting, because as that goes past that time, it's less likely that customer's going to come on board. And we have, I think about 47% of merchants.
So for a given person on your team, how many people is it reasonable for them, or how many businesses is it a reasonable expectation for them to onboard each week? Or is there like no clear like number?
That's an interesting question. I wish I knew the answer.
That's fair. I asked many shows in this question that many people just don't have an answer for, or there's no good answer yet.
I think like where we sort of land on is each person should be able to handle about 20 merchants per month.
Okay.
So like, we've got about 1,500 merchants. So like that's a lot of people, but we've rolled them out in a lot of time, right? And we do have a pretty big team. Like we've got about 50 in our team currently.
And on these onboardings, are we talking about something where like they physically go to the restaurant or hospitality business and like help them take photos, or is it purely through like Zoom or some hybrid of the two?
Like I've always been, we should not be visiting anyone. We should be doing everything over the phone. And Matt, my business partner, is the opposite. He's like, we should do everything in person. Because I'm all about the efficiency of like, calls. You can sit at home and you can just make calls. Like we're doing this, interview now from all over the world. But it was interesting because Matt was always like, "Oh, we couldn't sign merch. We won't be able to do this." And um, yeah, like COVID changed that. We didn't really have a choice, so everything had to go over internet and over phone. But what we're finding is the people, like this people in the roles, like the salespeople, they actually want to go see people, right? Like there comes a point when they need to be in front of people because typically they're needing that. They're not introverted, they're extroverted. They want that energy that you get from being around other people. So there's a balance. With the, if we could do everything over like through online, yeah, that'd be great. But also like for our people, it's important that they get in front of merchants, and also they get by going to a hospitality venue, you get a more clear understanding of what that business is doing well, what they're not doing well, and it does offer a better service, but it's just not really scalable, I guess, to go see every single person.
If everything could, or at least if most, if not everything, could be done through a digital interface, either through phone or Zoom, is there a reason you haven't decided to move past certain regional boundaries?
Yeah, like the way our product's quite unique in that, we're processing a transaction. So there's a whole bunch of laws
Oh, I see. I
around
see.
data and privacy policies and all this sort of stuff. So we have to pick off markets that are suitable. So at the moment we're in like Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and we see that as sort of one market called APAC, and then we have the UK. Our growth plans over the next 12 or so months are to expand into Europe, into Spain, Italy, France, Germany, and we'll pick off each market. So instead of just having a sort of, if you're a typical SaaS business, you can just go, oh, we'll go global wherever it goes, whatever. But for us, we really pick off a market, and there's other intricacies as well. So like the point of sale, what the merchant puts your orders through when you currently go into hospitality business, they're kind of unique to a market. Yeah, there's a couple of global players, but no one's really. It's a very fragmented marketplace. There's so many providers. In Australia, there'd be 30 providers that have a decent amount of share. It's crazy how fragmented it is, and that's just Australia. And then you've got like the UK is completely different. Then the other markets we're looking at, it's the same thing. So you have to do some work with those local providers to provide our solution.
Is there any plan, even if in the long term, to get into the North American market?
Uh, like when we were choosing to go to the UK, we spent a month in London, me and Matt, and a month in New York, and we decided on the UK because a few reasons. One, it was a more condensed market. It's, US is huge and really spread out. But the UK aligned with us in terms of the density of market. It's very close culturally to Australia. So basically, if you're from England, you're basically Australian. There's not much difference. So it's really easy for us to communicate and and work with the English market. And the other thing was there was an incumbent in the US called Level Up. I don't know if you've
I think
seen
I'm
them,
loosely familiar with them.
but
Yeah.
they had a lot of market share. And we sat down with some pretty big groups in New York, like do you know Bluestone Lane
I
Coffee?
don't.
Um, anyway, they were using Level Up and they wanted to work with us, and they pushed us pretty hard to go to the US. But we were just like, there wasn't really much competition at the time in the UK, so we chose that market. And then, yeah, I don't know, the US, like to me, I don't really love it as a market. I find it's like when we were talking to merchants, right? They had been absolutely hounded. And it's not just by
I
our
see.
product. It will be by a HR platform. And so instead of there being one HR platform, there's been 100 because it's so easy to raise capital. Going and raising $1 million in the US is not
Right.
that difficult, right? Like, whereas in Australia, it's really hard, like to
Mm.
do that. So the merchants had this fatigue of like, oh, you're going to be out of business, whatever, like leave us alone
I
sort of
see.
thing as well. So I don't know. Maybe one day that'll change. But I'd like to nail down Europe first and get a bit more traction in a few more European markets, and then we can look at expanding.
When you raised capital, was that in Australia?
Yeah, our first cap raise was in Australia, so we raised a small amount of money at the time to actually buy out one of our founding partners. So there was three of us in the business, and we basically couldn't work together
Interesting.
anymore. What I've found now after going through that process is it's a pretty typical story for a startup. And so like the relationship wasn't working, and we bought out Nick, our business partner, who he was kind of the founder of Loke
Mm.
initially, and then brought me and Matt in. Um, but and then we used that money to establish another market, with the idea to then do a Series A. That took a little bit longer than expected, and we had to do a bit of a bridging round
Mm.
between, which sort of came from Australia and the UK. And then our latest round, which was our Series A, was 90% out of the UK, 10% of the funds out of Oz.
Hmm. Was it difficult, or did you know ahead of time it was gonna be difficult to raise in Australia?
Yeah, like me and Matt really struggled, but a lot of that we were struggling with was, and why we ended up, trying to get Nick out was every time we'd go meet investors, they were like, "Oh, well, who's this other guy that
Oh, I
owns a
see.
big
I see.
chunk of the business?" And we were like, "Oh, he's our business partner. He's silent, like, and it just became investors were just like, well, yeah, we're not comfortable
Okay.
with this. And so that was difficult, but also the Australian investor scene is really small. So the where they place their money isn't really very high risk, and we're quite a high risk business. Um, so they'll typically go to us, when we'd meet with them, they'd say, "Oh, we want to see $1 million a year revenue," and we'd be like, "Oh, we're doing 500K, like we're growing, we're doing this, and this, right? Like, oh no, I want to see 1 million." And then when you get to 1 million, you go see them, they're like, "Oh, we want to see $2 million a year revenue." You're just like I had
Unfortunate
one
game.
one investor, and then we went to him. We went to him last year, and then they said, "Oh, sorry, you're too big." After, and I was like, "Jesus, just got to be right, doesn't it?" Like that's
Wait,
totally
let's dive into
different.
that. What you were specifically too big for their fund, or they just don't invest, or like what happens there? Like I haven't heard of that before.
So we went to him when we were too small. We went to him when what we thought was right. We weren't interested, and then we went to him start of this year when we were doing our Series A, and they said, "No, you're too
Hmm.
big." Like, really, what they're saying is, for the valuation,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying we're not interested. But it is hard because the investors like scene, they're not really honest about why they're not investing in something. And maybe it's because they don't know
Okay.
why, but they'll say things like you're too big, or we need to see more MRR, like monthly
Right.
recurring revenue, or um, you know, oh, your team's dispersed too much. Like, and it's not actually why they're not investing. Like, you just like, it might be because they just go, well, your valuation's wrong, and we can't, we can't work that out. It's like if I'm hiring someone, I always say, look, what's your salary expectation? Because I have a
Right.
budget in mind, and if that doesn't match up, I don't want to
Right.
negotiate down on what you
Yeah.
expect to get paid, because otherwise you'll just be unhappy, right? and it's the same sort of thing with them. They're like saying, well, you're saying a $10 million valuation, and we're thinking it's more like a
I see.
five, and we're not. It's too big a delta to negotiate on.
So after your first, when you're, I guess, raising your series, your seed series, did you know that you wanted to go to the UK the next time? Is that what the strategy was?
Well, it wasn't actually the UK. It wasn't really set in stone. We just knew we wanted to get out of
Okay.
Australia, so we were like either the US or UK. Um, they were the two markets. Matt was more inclined to go to the US because he just loves New York and that and that scene. And I was like more open to just seeing what market was better. Um, but yeah, in the end, I think we nailed the decision because we absolutely dominating the UK and now accounts for about 80% of our revenue globally. So it's been the right call.
How many pitches did you have to go through to get to that funding?
Pitches in which one?
Um,
I reckon
the
I would have pitched the business myself to 300
shoot.
people.
Okay. Wow.
Like Matt's probably the same, or like maybe between us 500 businesses. And that pitch might be calling like an investor and having a 5-10 minute conversation, and them just being like, no, not interested. You get a lot of no's. You've got to have thick skin
Right.
as a founder of a startup. Like there's so many no's, and the worst part for me and Matt is we don't really care about getting no's. Like that's never bothered us. We just want to know what we can be doing
Hmm.
better. And a lot of people are scared to tell you.
Hmm.
Like they're scared to go, I don't know, like these are the problems with your business. They're not upfront about it, and that makes it really difficult. So to even like after someone said no, like yeah, like Matt's so aggressive with his sales skill and so good at it. He'll just hound them to be like, hey, why not? Why not? Like, explain to me why, so we can learn from it and we can improve on it. Um, he's probably a heap better at that than I would be.
Hey, if it works, if it gets you a good answer, it's a good strategy.
Yeah, it does, and it things do change and people's minds do change when they get into more detail. But more importantly for us, it's like you learn how to pitch the business differently to the next guy.
So what's the current pitch if you were to like attempt to raise a Series B? Like what's the 30-second spiel?
30 seconds. That's a tough spiel. Well, like if we were raising Series B, it will be likely by the end of the year we'd open a Series B, and our growth would have been substantial. So showing big growth over the last 12 months, which should be relatively easy to show, is super important in that. That's what an investor wants to hear. Second to that is what's your
Right.
product and what's it solving. And because we have a really big product, like distilling that really simply, you might explain a feature. So it depends on the investor you're talking to. I might just say, yeah, have you been out, to a restaurant recently? Yeah, we provide that
Hmm.
order at table technology. And then we build on top of that and provide a full suite of sales and marketing tools for the hospitality business so they can drive an increase in how much money it's making, an increase in frequency. And then I'll always be like, this is me telling you, I've got the data to back it up. I've got, the merchants saying that we're doing that. So have a look at our
Hmm.
website, check it out, like go to our case studies, and you can see real people telling you that we're making them more money, which is, a reason to
Right. Right.
invest.
Okay. Do you feel like you are now desensitized to rejection? Is that a feeling that you've like gained in the process?
Yeah, never really feel rejection. Like, I don't know, like maybe I started selling telco, right? I don't know like what it's like in the US, but telco, people yell at you when you call them. Like you pretty quickly become
Okay.
desensitized to people being angry or rejecting you. Like, um, It is interesting though. I always think, imagine if just like every person I talked to had have just seen my vision quicker, like where we'd be today, you know. But maybe not. Maybe you got to go through that process, and you've got to learn from it. And we've had to be super frugal with our money over the years, and we've had to survive, and we've gone through massive ups and downs. Like, had big customers that we thought were going to take us to the next level, cost us a
Hmm.
fortune, and not ever roll out, and things like that that just really hurt you as a business. But we've managed to survive, and it's all about that persistence in my eyes, just persisting and staying alive. If you can stay alive long enough, you'll be successful.
And you've been around in the business. I think in America at least, 90% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. So I believe you're past that 5 year mark by a good amount. So maybe it's in your favor or as time goes on.
Nailing it, huh? Yeah, well, that means 10% of businesses still fail after that. That's interesting.
There are a good number of
But
businesses who fail between
I,
year 6 and 10.
I'm the eternal optimist, though. You have to be running a business. So I'm always, yeah, always looking at the bright side of all situations.
It definitely takes a.
So no, it is good to have survived, this amount of time, and now to really be hitting our straps, and the growth we're seeing is like really exciting as a business and for the team. Like a lot of the teams been with us, like the core teams, we've been together for so long. Like this is our like life's work so far. Like it's pretty exciting to see that we're able to really drive huge growth.
What other things from your past do you feel really enable you to be a good leader now and a resilient entrepreneur?
Oh, I don't know. That's an interesting one. I've just always like been entrepreneurial since I was a kid. I'd always trying different ways to make money and going. I used to go door to door, like selling car washes with a kid that was a year younger than me from around the corner. We'd wash cars together and like just anything like that. Any way I could make money, like I'd go get lemons and sell them door to door, go collect people's like bottles, just whatever. Like I just find ways to do that. Um, in terms of leadership, I think a big thing changed for me is I had a kid like 2 years ago, and I think that's actually made me a much better
Hmm.
leader because um, having him has shown, like, I guess the team that it's okay. Like I've always been like it's okay to have a work-life balance, but now people are seeing that with me. Like I'll be in a meeting and Freddie will walk into the room and like it's not a big deal. Like I'm just like, hey, say hi to whoever, and and then he'll crack it, and I'll be like, all right, mate, come on, time to go. But but it's made me like be probably more empathetic
Hmm.
to people's situations, and yeah, strive to be that leader that's really helping people. That's my role, right? To help and support my team. So yeah, I think it's been a super positive of the last couple of years.
Would you say that you share 100% or at least 95% of ideas in terms of what you think the company culture should be about with your co-CEO?
Yeah, yeah, we talk about everything. So
How'd you
um,
how'd you go about that journey of building those cultural values?
I think we just like built them on our just values, right? Like our personal values and how we like to treat people and look after people. And yeah, everything we try to build within the business is about just helping and supporting each other, and being there for one another. And I'm one of those people that like if you're moving house, like I'll be like, oh mate, do you need a hand
Hmm.
moving house? Like, but I'll actually mean it, and I'll actually go and help you do that. And like they're the people I try like to attract to work at the business, like people that are just willing to help each
Hmm.
other out, like because it just makes such a better
Right.
environment. Like, um, but it is becoming more like I'm learning a lot over the last 12 months or 18 months. We've grown our team quite significantly, and there is a little bit of politics coming into play, which I hate and don't want to be involved in. Um, so I try to stamp that out, but that is probably the next challenge is to like, how do you go from being 50 heads to 200 and not, have people's self-interest of rather, at the
Hmm.
forefront and have like the company still keep the company's self-interest at the forefront of decision making.
It's definitely a hard problem to solve, definitely for those fast-growing companies. I think it's hard to keep track of both the hiring as well as the cultural enjoyment of the people who are already been in the system for a while.
Yeah, we just like hired a chief people officer, and yeah, I think that will be. It's already. She's only been with us for a few weeks, um, but it's just been so huge for our business already.
Hmm.
Like it's just really good to have that role. Um,
What do they do that's
it
such
was
a
something.
major win in from your eyes?
Take a lot of my role off my hands.
That is a nice nicety.
I was just saying to like our investor yesterday. I was like, I keep getting these people in. Like, we got a CFO sort of late last year, and like so all that CFO work that I did went to Ian, our CFO, and then like now I've got this head of people, and I'm pushing all that work that I do to Sophie. And I was saying like, oh, it's just crazy. Like, you hire these people, and they're like having a full role, and I'm giving them all this work that I off my plate, but then my plate's just getting bigger. And it's just like
It's a sign of a growing company.
I just want I just want to scale myself out, but it's just not working.
Are there current responsibilities that you feel like you will never be able to hand off to someone else?
um, yeah, like growth and vision like and that
Hmm.
side of it. It's like I don't think you can ever hand that off as the CEO of a business. Like, you need to make those decisions. Um, you can get support with making those decisions, but at the end of the day, the buck stops a bit with you. So yeah, that stuff I probably can't. There's definitely still some areas that I could hand off, but hopefully we'll get to them over the next year or two.
Cool. Well, I've been very grateful for your time. This has been a very enjoyable conversation. I just want to make sure I'm respectful of your time, and I just want to ask one common question I like to ask all of my guests. What's the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you? That's something they like to do.
Uh, Reach out to me on LinkedIn is the easiest way. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Happy to chat with anyone, whether you're a startup starting out, or you want to come work at Loke, or you're a merchant that wants our product. Yeah, reach out to me. Um, Through LinkedIn's probably the easiest way.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again for your time, Tom.